Hey there, friends. Welcome to the FBC Missions So That podcast. Today, we have Pastor Jason and Pastor Chad back in the studio with us to share more about their recent trip to India.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to FBC Missions So That podcast. This is an encouraging place to hear how God is working in and around us. We know that He blesses His people so that they can bless the world around them. Join us as we discuss how to join God in all that He is doing. Why is God working in our life, church, and community? It's so that through us the world will know that He is near.
Well, hey there. Yeah, we're excited to be here. This is Brittany Whitworth, and welcome to the FBC Mission So That podcast. I'm super excited to be back in the studio today for part 3 of just hearing about Pastor Jason and Pastor Chad's trip to India. Wow. Last 2 episodes, hopefully you've been able to check those out, episode 76 and episode 77, where we really took a moment to just say, why did you guys go to India? What was the purpose of that? So you can hear about that in episode 76. And you can also really get a really good understanding of why India. It was so cool when y'all shared with us, if you're wanting to go somewhere, if you feel the Lord tugging on your heart, the answer is India. It's kind of like in Sunday school class. If you don't know the answer is Jesus. But in terms of missions, the answer is India. So we got a really good grasp as to why you went to India in episode 76. And then in episode 77, we really started diving into some stories. And wow, watching both of you light up for the stories that we heard, and even the way that we'll just do a little recap for us of episode 77 and the awesome story about the man bringing the people into his home and how that has spread so quickly, and then we'll dive right into today.
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to listen to this. They're going to be live. They're going to be easiest if you see there. But basically, last week we got to talk about, I would call it the first half of our trip in some ways, and so most of that was in this area called Bihar, specifically in Bodh Gaya. We talked about how that was like the birthplace of global Buddhism as well, and how that has such an impact in that particular city and the region there. And then, of course, how God has been working among them. So unbelievable. The man that was hosting us also has a children's home and orphanage. And in that space, he's been able to see God work among the people of Bodh Gaya to respond to the gospel. So really in the last 8 or 9 years that he's been as a church planter, he had started his own church that had grown and was doing quite well. He realized he was never able to grow the church large enough to impact the region without having a multiplying process. And so now they said around 8,000 churches that they've seen, that they've documented. They say it's probably quite a few more that have happened since they did the last kind of work through and visits. But with that, we visited several of those, but one in particular was really neat, where we saw a man who's about, I think they said 6 or 8 months in his faith, has opened his home, and people are worshiping in his house daily. And then ultimately, they've seen a number of other churches planted in the same street through his influence and network in his natural relationships around him. So it's really quite incredible to see how God has used him in such a short amount of time to have such an impact through his faith.
That is so cool.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add is just the perspective of seeing the dignity and worth that the gospel gives, that Christianity is based upon, right? No matter who you are, what caste, what education you have, the gospel is for you, and you have kingdom worth and value, and this agricultural farmer, low education, low caste, was doing incredible things in his village, spreading the gospel, using his home as a church, and the gospel was moving mightily. It was awesome to see.
That's so cool. And time again, we see that in the Bible. The Lord uses one you wouldn't imagine to do great things.
Almost everyone that you see in the Bible is one of those people that you would have never imagined to be in this position or place, or definitely not in there. When we read about them, they're superstars. They've done something remarkable But you oftentimes get stuck with that place. You're like, oh, these were amazing people, a Moses, for instance, or a David, or just go down the list. And then you reminded later on that these were quite unremarkable and oftentimes criminal. David's a forgotten, the one that is like, don't you have any other sons? Oh yeah, there's the one out with the sheep. We could call him in, You realize these are not the superstars. Even the disciples are fishermen and tax collectors and zealots, rebel leaders. These are not the people that you're picking to be your lead pastor or your organizational CEO. Absolutely. And yet God takes them and does something remarkable, and now they are those kind of people. It's quite incredible. We see that all throughout, almost everywhere we go, missions-wise. God raises up people that we would have never dreamed, and then does things that we would never dream through them.
Well, and I want to just land here for a really quick second, but I want to applaud both of you as leaders of the church, because this past Sunday was Mission Sunday. And it was incredible. I got to sit through the luncheon and hear about all the upcoming trips in 2026. And there are probably people in our church who are thinking kind of, why me? Kind of this whole story that we see in the Bible, why me? And we have, as children of the Lord, we have the opportunity to go and serve and to go and help bring all people to him, because we know in Revelation 7:9 the promise that in the throne room there will be all nations, all tribes there. And we have a part to play in bringing that to. It's going to happen one way or the other, but we can take part. And so just thank you to both of you for this amazing, healthy church that we're a part of, with opportunities to go and serve. And so there's just so much that we can be a part of, and so much possibility. So,
well, I know Jason will agree with me. Like, it's not ours. we
feel it's a privilege.
We feel privileged to get to be a part of it. We have a great team that's working behind the scenes, both on our staff, which is like 23 or 27, or I don't know how many people. Every time we walk into a staff meeting, it's slightly different. So we also have a huge number of missions team members behind the scenes so there was a lot of effort that went into this weekend, and it really does just remind me of what a blessing it is. One lady walked up to me after the service, and she said something I thought was kind of odd. She's like, I'm so glad that you get to have a job that you love so much. I thought, that's not necessarily what I was hoping everyone would see when I'm telling them about what God's doing around the nations, that Chad really likes his job. But I was kind of happy that it's also evident that I really am blessed to be in a unique place to do things like this, and it really is a privilege for me. That's and so awesome. It's fun. Somehow somebody saw that. That's what they wanted to say. I'm glad you really like your job. Okay. Yeah, me too.
Well, and I hope for our listeners listening to this, I hope that you, as you're listening to the stories we're about to tell you, and possibly your heart is stirred, I want to encourage you to go check out the opportunities, because you're going to hear the joy. You heard at the very start of this, Pastor Jason chimed in with the hello, and you heard the joy in his voice. And there is so much joy in being a part of God's kingdom. And so what we want to do today is we want to take another few minutes actually, to hear some of the stories from your trip to India. So one of the names that has already come up that both of you have really had on your hearts to share is the story of Amritsar. Is that correct?
Yeah. There's extra S's and R's, so it's not Amritsar, it's Amritsar.
Sure, with my Texas accent.
Yeah, it's an incredible place that probably very few people listening to this has ever heard of before. So really our trip was divided into two sections. One was in Bihar state, and we went to two locations, and then we really made a major shift and ended up in Punjab state, which is on the other side of northern India and borders Pakistan. And the capital city of that state is called Amritsar.
Okay.
And it's the birthplace of another global religion called Sikhism. And so its primary temple, where people from the world pilgrimage to come and see, is right there in the middle of Amritsar. And we visited that temple, and we learned again how God was moving. This network is actually quite larger than the one that we saw in Bodh Gaya, which we mentioned was around 8,000 churches. This one, they said, have 45,000 churches, which is remarkable, representing somewhere around 1 million, if not 1.2 million believers, almost all of them new to their faith in the last 10 to 12 years. And then we realized what it takes for that. So let me just give you a quick explanation. 45,000 churches doesn't come about by one guy going from town to town to town. It takes a lot of people. So one of my goals was trying to understand even the way a complex network works. And it's actually thousands of leaders working together to make this happen. And so let me just give you a real quick description. The headquarters is actually in Bihar state, in the capital, which is Patna. And there's a staff of like 7 people that are working with the network leader that we got to meet with. And I'm not going to say his name right now because I don't know that we want his name on a podcast like this. He's been written about in lots of places. But anyway, his staff works to support this network, and they've got about 25 people that they work with closely. Beyond that, they said that there was almost 700 different ministries connected to several hundred leaders that they've coached and worked with over the years. And those 700 ministries have networks of their own. Okay, so this is kind of how you start to build this kind of numbers. As you see 700 ministries, they said those 700 ministries represent 6,000 catalytic planters. And what that means is those catalysts have been planting and training and caring and coaching and leading people to faith for some time, and they're coaching and caring for each of those 6,000. Through the 700, through the 25, through the 7, right? So you kind of see how this builds. And then ultimately you have 45,000 house churches that are led by a planter. And so the 6,000 are each relating to, 5 to 10 churches. Some of them maybe as many as 25. Some of them are smaller because they're just getting started. And that's how you get some sort of extremely high number of 45,000 churches representing 1.2 million believers, right? So you break it all down, and what you have is a network of connectedness and care and coaching and pastoral care. These from the believer at the lowest level. There's a support mechanism all the way through to the staff that's in one city trying to help care for them across this entire area. And so when you look at where the 45,000 churches are, they're spread across all of northern India. Wow. And so what we ended up doing was going to see one branch, which is kind of that Punjab branch, where they had about 3,000 churches of the 45,000 are in that region. And we met with kind of the network there. One of the leaders was a guy named Thomas. We really enjoyed getting to know him. He's a Sikh-background believer. So he grew up Sikh. He's got the turban. He's got when you go from Bihar to Punjab, you go through such a stark, contrasting cultural change. You go from a place that's primarily Hindu to a place that's primarily Sikh. And you really see 2 very different cultures. Mm-hmm. Everything from the cleanliness, kind of the pride of the people, the way that they represent themselves, the way that they dress is completely different. And so it really was eye-opening. When you got off the plane and you landed there, you're like, we're in a different place. This is India, but it's not like the India we just saw.
Mm. For those that don't know, much about Sikh as a religion, it's actually pretty close to Christianity in some of its foundations and fundamentals. We learned a little bit about it on the trip. One is that they believe in one God, so they're monotheist, and they believe in caring for the poor. They believe in good works. What else, Chad? They have a holy book and writings. I think it came about. I don't know, in the last
700 years, I think, is what they were saying. Yeah, 600 or 700 years ago is when it was started. When we walk through the temple, which they call the Golden Temple, and it actually is one of the most remarkable places I've been on the planet.
It's beautiful. I did look it up.
It's incredibly beautiful. And again, you see if you go to the Buddhist temple in Bodh Gaya, and then you compare it to the Sikh temple in Amritsar, it's like 2 different places. The Buddhist temple is kind of run down. It's messy. You see a lot of things that you think, man, this place could really work on this and make it. If they're bringing in millions of people from around the world, why isn't it nicer, right? Like you kind of wonder that. Then you go to the Sikh temple and you're like, this is all of that and some. like around the temple, it's beautiful shopping areas, touristy, and then you go into the temple, it's gorgeous. They've got these big screens within the temple that are flashing key scriptures in English and in Hindi and the different languages. So we're able to read what it says, and it's saying things like, we should care for the hurting and the broken, the lost, the poor. We treat people with humility and dignity. You know, like there's all these sayings. Like these are very Christian-esque type sayings.
Yeah, every scripture I saw, I agreed with in principle.
Yeah. In principle, you're like, this could come right out of our own scriptures. Like there's a lot of similarities. It also feels kind of Muslim. Like they've got the way that they have the turbans. They've got certain ways that they dress. All men act this way, and some, you know, all women act, you know, they look and so there's some very clear roles and things. It was just interesting because I have not in my own life interacted with Sikhism to very, very much. So it was interesting.
Now remember, listener, inherently at the root of every world religion outside of Christianity is it's man working his way to God for God's approval. It's works-based. Mm-hmm. So am I good enough in my generosity and my good deeds and on and on and on. And so we got to see that they were there to get baptized in their temple. They were there to see and to read Holy Scriptures. They had gurus teaching. People were very reverent, and they actually discouraged us from just walking around like tourists and taking pictures. So this was their most holy spot. The good news of all of this, as we were talking to Thomas was our guide there, was that they are seeing a large movement amongst Sikhs. So Chad and I were like, hey, this is so close. It would seem like the divide is not that far. Just insert the gospel and a lot of the foundations there. And that's exactly what's happening. So Thomas is one of those church planners and leaders and who was raised Sikh. His grandfather became a believer, and it began to trickle down through the family. They're Sikh by culture, and he still keeps some of those cultural things, but now he's on fire for the Lord, and God is moving amongst the Sikh people.
So what, I mean, that, like hearing y'all say all of this, I have so many images in my head and just so many things that I'm curious even more about, but of course we have limited time. So when you think about someone listening to this podcast and you're sharing with, you know, us this experience, what would you want someone to take away, or what would you hope might be some of the stirrings in their heart right now?
Well, one of the things that just comes to mind right away is that we often seem to think about the lost, or especially we think about other religions, and I think it's easy to see them as someone who is opposing us. Mm. And if you meet a Sikh man, and I think what I noticed is the Sikh were also well-nourished, maybe the right word. Like, they are big, strong Indians. Mm. A lot of places in India, it seems like people are small and thin, and it seems like maybe they just don't have access to a lot of food. The Sikhs were not that. They were strong. Like, they, they pride themselves in a number. Like, one of the things, every Sikh man has a gold bracelet, right? It's like part of their culture. So, like, having the wealth to buy gold bracelets and those kind of things. So they're big people. So if you were to run into a Sikh man, you might be very intimidated by him. He's got a turban, he's wearing a gold bracelet. If you know anything, he's probably got a knife on him. That's one of their other things. And every Sikh man carries a knife, and it's part of their even rite of passage. When they become a man, they give them this beautiful dagger that they keep on them. It's part of their, and so you might, if you know all those things, you might be nervous, like, oh, this guy could be a threat. And yet, again, when you spend time among any people group, mm-hmm. and I would say, even if you were to say radical Muslims, if you meet them outside of their particular space, you find that they're just people. Mm-hmm. And they're people that are trying to figure out how to be successful in this world. And some part of it has to do with how they're successful in their spiritual life. And so, again, you find people who go through extreme effort to try to please God or the gods or a god or any variation of what people think. And so ultimately, people are just people. And they were so kind to us. Everywhere we went, those who were believers, of course, you share something very significant. You have something very significant in common. But even those who weren't, like we went into coffee shops. There was a Starbucks in Amritsar, and we went in there a couple of times, and it was they were so kind. Even the people who were strangers were nice to us, and so it's just very interesting to me. I would tell you, when you foster a heart that is founded on the gospel, you see every person as a person that God made for a purpose and a reason, and that purpose is to glorify Him. And many people in the world don't understand that as their created purpose, So you see, and you have compassion, and you have love for them, regardless of whether you think they're a threat. You see God is working, hopefully, to draw them to Him, And that's a meaningful thing. That should be a core baseline for every believer in the world. That's so good.
My husband and I we have family meetings at our house, and our family meeting Sunday night went rather long. And we ended on Colossians 3:12 through 14, and that's that verse that when we put on like Christ-like characteristics, and compassion is a biggie. And I think as Christians, compassion just overflows from us because we are living in a state of mind of connection and seeing everyone as brothers and sisters, and we're all hopefully drawing more and more people to Him. So that's a beautiful, beautiful takeaway. What about you, Pastor Jason? What would you say you would love for people to know as a result of your experience there?
I would say Amritsar especially, I was really impressed and amazed at the level of unity and the camaraderie between believers. The way that the gospel goes not only between states in India, between caste in India, but one of the amazing things that we got to see in Amritsar was the gospel going outside of India to Pakistan and to Afghanistan. So one of the things we wanted to talk about was these network leaders that are there on the border with Pakistan. They are training church planters on the other side of the border via Zoom and into Afghanistan via Zoom. They have to block out their screens, but they have networks and connections that says, yes, this is a trustworthy person, and they're willing to risk it. And they began to have those church planting conversations so that the gospel movement and some of these tools can get in their hands.
What do you mean by block out their screens?
Like, you have to realize Pakistan and India hate each other. Mm-hmm. They've had a battles for years over a region that both claim, and the world just kind of stays out of it. It's called Kashmir. And all along the Pakistan-India border, it's fenced. It's like a demilitarized zone. In fact, one of the funniest parts of our entire trip.
Well, just to say this real quick, they were at war
months ago.
What, like 2 months ago?
Yeah, they're at war all the time. But a few months ago, they were lobbing missiles at each other across the border. And so even us going to the border, which we actually went to the Pakistan border.
Wow.
And it's one of the craziest things. There's a movie, it's a Christmas movie called Klaus. I don't know if you've seen it. My kids like it.
Oh, I
and
haven't.
It tells the story of a mailman that moves to this community that's completely divided. They hate each other. And like they actually ring a bell and they throw axes across the street. It's just like this really, for a cartoon.
Sounds very Christmas-like.
For a cartoon, it's really funny. Well, of course, Klaus begins to like give gifts, and it brings harmony and all this. At the end of it, there's no axe throwing, but the beginning is just like this crazy. Well, this is the picture in my mind, because there's a stadium that's built right on the border of Pakistan, and Pakistan answered by building a stadium right on the fence. So you've got these it's actually two huge stadiums butted up against each other on the border, where there's a militarized gate. You've got guards with guns on both sides. You can see the Pakistan side, you can see the Indian side. And up until the war, they would open these gates in the morning, and there's a ceremony around it. And then the nighttime, the ceremony of closing the gates was where they gather this huge crowd and really sing and chant insults at each other back and forth across. And it's so...
It's not that different from the U.S.
I've never seen anything like this in the United States. Imagine if we had a stadium on the Mexican border.
Well, maybe not the stadium.
And Mexico built the stadium, and then we just hurled insults back at each other. It was quite remarkable.
We're talking about a stadium that's going to hold 20,000 people.
Yeah, this is no small thing.
Think like soccer stadium.
Yeah.
Think of cheerleaders or yell leaders
Wow.
down there.
It's an event.
It's huge.
Getting the crowd riled up so they will all in unison yell, chants and slurs at the other side. And then in addition to that, the military is very demonstrative in their,
Like you can't see what
Y'all
Jason's
can't see the
doing,
hand
but
gestures.
they're making gestures
They're making
at
all
each other.
these
Like
hand
they
gestures.
march really aggressively up to the fence and then do some very rude gesture to the other side. And then the other side's doing the same thing. It's going back and they've coordinated it. So there is it's quite interesting that these two countries that hate each other have enough care for each other to coordinate this choreographed thing. It's one of the funniest things I have ever seen.
It's bizarre. Can we say bizarre?
It's bizarre.
It is bizarre, and it also, this is another thing. It highlighted to me this kind of national fervor that both countries have for their own country, and it reminded me of kind of our own nationalistic or patriotic kind of concepts here in the United States, and how, to some degree, I feel like passing away. Like I remember when I was a kid, like we would do these little things like. Did you ever do like reenactments of old stories, in middle school or in even elementary school? I remember when I was living in Mexico, like they had kids dress up like Pancho Villa and they painted the mustache on them, That was Mexico. But in the United States, I feel like we used to see those type of little things. I don't see that kind of stuff anymore at all. Like I don't see we're going to do a patriotic. This little kid is dressed up like George Washington, and this one is Abraham. I don't see those kind of things the way we used to. But anyway, these events that we saw there in India and Pakistan were like, that's what the whole thing was.
Wow.
And it was really interesting to see. And here's the thing, because they hate each other so much, they can't travel to each other's countries. It takes, they just can't do it. So,
And Chad, the divide, right, was over religion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pakistan broke from India because India is Hindu and the Pakistani are Muslim. They said, we're Muslim, we're not Hindu. And so that was the reason for the divide, was a religious divide.
Wow.
And even while they're cheering, the Indians are cheering, they're calling India Hindustan. They're chanting Hindustan.
Wow.
In Pakistan, Pak is the Arabic word for holy. So they're saying holy land. So Pakistan is chanting Pakistan, which means like the holy land in Arabic. And Hindustan is the Hindu nation of Hindus. And so it really is a religious tension. And so what's remarkable is that within both these places that God is working, and even through these church planting movements, that God is, they said somewhere around, I think they said 500 to 700 church plants now in Pakistan. And there's a leader there that's baptizing. They mentioned like some key leaders have come to faith. And then they said, Pakistan is not friendly with Afghanistan either. Like, so you got another stand there where they have another extreme. Afghanistan is the diamond land. So Afghanistan's famous for its natural resources. But they're talking about some Taliban have come to faith. They're talking about some Afghan generals have been baptized and are influencing their whole networks. And so they had several hundred churches in Afghanistan that are only 6 months. The whole network there is only 6 months old. So they can't meet. So every now and then they're bringing these key leaders to Dubai so that they can have in-person conversations and pray with them and encourage them and train them and work with them. And then they're going back to their own country. So the movement continues to grow well beyond Amritsar and Punjab and North India. So now it's growing in these other countries. And that was remarkable to know. But I'll tell you, I think what's most meaningful is to talk about some of the individuals we met.
Yes.
And specifically, we got to go visit a family.
Okay. Let's
And it was
hear
another
about
church
that.
plant down a dirt road. We drove probably over an hour outside the city. We passed all the rice paddies. Like, it seemed like everyone had acres of rice. That was kind of what was the main staple. And it actually looked kind of like rural America. You'd see 3 or 4 acres with a small house in the middle of the rice, So like you might think of a small ranch, small farmer's village, or someone that has cows. There's one house, some trees around it, and then the rest of it is ranch land. And that's kind of the way this would look. None of them would call them ranches. It's rice paddies, but that's kind of the way it looked.
So you got to meet some of the people?
Yeah, so we drove way down this place, ended up on this little tiny dirt road. The cars couldn't even get down. We walked the last 100 yards to the house. And per the usual, they were so excited to have us. Every time we met anyone, it came with a small welcome ceremony where they put leis around our necks. They had some music playing. Some places were extravagant with loud drums and crazy things. This one was just so sweet and nice. But they even showered us with petals as we were walking in.
They spelled out welcome with the flowers on the ground.
The marigolds.
Wow.
You know how Indians had marigolds? Like they had marigolds.
And why were they so excited to see you?
Just hospitality to have Westerners in their home. They took their home apart for us to get in there. We didn't realize till later that they took their refrigerator out. They completely emptied out their living room so that we could meet there. Now a church meets in this location as well. So it may be that they needed the room to get us all in, and then they hosted us in their bedroom because it had air conditioning. And
we didn't know it was their bedroom because all it had was couches and tables in it. But later we realized they had moved the bed out of the bedroom, moved the couches into the bedroom, so we would have a comfortable place to eat our dinner or eat our lunch.
Yeah, because it had air conditioning, so that was the only room that had
They wanted you there. They wanted you to be
us
comfortable.
there. Yeah.
And you talked about that last week, Pastor Jason. You talked about church. You know, we think of church, and our brain, our context for church is, if you remember here at FBC, is what we see in our sanctuary on a Sunday. But that's not church in India. So that is where they have church, and they wanted you to be in their church. And that was pretty special. I see the smile on your face. So tell us about that.
Yeah, it's the beauty, the absolute incredible beauty of the movement of the Bible, that church in its essence is where is the Spirit of God. Mm-hmm. And in the Old Testament, like it is specifically located. God says you must come to the tabernacle and then to the temple. You must meet me there, come bring the sacrifices there, go through all of these ceremonial cleansings and rituals, go through the priesthood, do all of these things to meet me there. And then Jesus comes according to God's plan to fulfill all of that and says, destroy this temple and I'll raise it up. And what you see happen, obviously, with the temple and the Spirit of God is it becomes the people of God. God's Spirit indwells his people, the living temple. And so the incredible beauty is that, we went to the Holy Sikh temple, and it was beautiful, and there was a lot of gold, and there was a lot of wealth, and there was a lot that was going on. But actually what is more beautiful is sitting in a 2-bedroom home that only has air conditioning in one room, that you have to move all the furniture out to get everyone in, and we sit on the floor, and with their resources, they take rose petals and put welcome on the floor, and then we sit around in a circle, and with a little instrument, we sing praises, we open God's word. That is actually more beautiful because it's just the reality that God's presence is where God's people are.
The essence of mission, in my opinion, and my very limited scope in terms of missions, because I've only so far been on 2 mission trips, but that is the essence of a mission trip right there. When we think about what we have access to here in the U.S., we have access to all of it. We have access to the Bible. I mean, just sitting here in this room, because we each have a cell phone with us, we have 3 Bibles. We can look at his name. We can listen to praise and worship music driving around town. We can hear a podcast upon podcast upon podcast. And yet, when you go to places like India, when you go to the ends of the earth, they're clearing out their home to make a church. They're decorating flowers on the ground to welcome you because you are the church, you are bringing Christ. And that is so cool. And that is just joy, the joy of our salvation and coming together and them being so encouraged because they're new believers. That is what we get to be a part of when we're willing to go, and we get to witness what's happening in the world and encourage other believers, if not bring believers to know him.
And you said joy. These people were full of joy. Chad, tell them the story.
As cool as the pedals are and the home, it's beautiful. There were people sitting outside. There was so many people in this little space. And what's most remarkable is how they came to faith, right? It wasn't because of us. We had nothing to do with it. We were understanding and we were trying to hear and understand their story.
Wow.
So, we got to the end of it. We finished the music. We had a beautiful meal. It was full of really odd foods. Some of it was like, can we even eat this? We're in a village. We're in a...
you always pray the missionary prayer.
Yeah, Lord, you put it in front of us. Take care of us, and... I got sick afterwards, different sickness, though. I don't think it was related, but I was tempted to think about it. Anyway, so this family comes to faith because their son, who was a driver, got run over by a truck. And when he was telling us the story, he lifted up his shirt and his scar.
Run over and drug.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
By a truck, we mean like a semi-truck.
Oh, my goodness.
And it burst his...
He was cut open.
It burst his stomach open, his entrails,
from his belly button all the way.
His whole sternum, all the way down to his lower, below his belly button was all split open. And they said he wasn't going to survive. They get to the doctor. They went to the witch doctor. They went to anyone that could help them, and they couldn't. And then they said there was a Christian that came around and was praying for people in the hospital and asked if he could pray. And he told them that, that God could heal in the name of Jesus. And they're like, at this point, he's not going to make it, so whatever. And God healed him. And so we met the boy. We saw his scar. He introduced us to his wife and his children, asked us to pray for them because he's struggling to find work right now. And then we met his father and the brother, who we were in the brother's house. And then we met the other brother, and they all had their families. And then the dad's mother. So we're like looking at 5 generations. We got great 4 generations. How many? Anyway, we had a bunch. And this whole pile of people. And all of them came to faith because of what God did in this one boy's life. And he's probably 20, 25 years old. And when we first got there, and the father, which is the grandfather of the kids, he's got this big blue turban. He's dressed in white. He's a big man. And I was like, he was so happy to have us there.
He was jovial.
I mean, like, if there was an India Santa Claus, this is the guy.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, he makes me think of Santa.
Like, he's so happy, and he's and he's one of the guys with the mustaches that goes out past his ears,
Wow.
Like, it was remarkable. And to see the joy, at the end we took a picture of him and his family. So his mother, which was, I don't know, in her 80s at least, all the way down to his grandchildren. And he's just like, this is his community, and they all look Sikh. If you saw them on the street, you would just assume they were like their Sikh neighbors, and yet they have the joy of the Lord in their lives. And again, we find out that in the last year, as they've shared, there's other churches being planted by their network and friendships and relationships down the road. And you see, the gospel has come to this home and to this community and to several communities as a result of this miraculous healing of this young man.
Our tests become our testimony, and it happens in India too.
Unbelievable, because this is a very common story. In fact, in all of our conversations in India, when we ask people how do they come to faith, almost all of them reported one of two things. Either someone they knew or themselves were healed of a sickness or an injury in a miraculous way, or they knew someone whose demon had demons cast out of them, and they were living
incredible
good lives, but they were living wrecked lives before. And you just think the way that God has showed up in power in these places looks so different than the way we see God working here. And it does. It causes you a little bit of almost like disequilibrium. How does this work? Why is this way? Is it they have more faith? We don't have faith. Like, what is it? And you wrestle through all those things. But you step back from it, and you just am utterly amazed at how God is drawing these people to himself.
Well, y'all went. What was one of the purposes of the trip is you went to find out about the movement, and you went to find out if it was true. And in fact, it is. And one of the things, right after you returned home, and I know we just have a few more minutes before we wrap up, but Pastor Jason, you shared in front of our FBC congregation about some baptisms that y'all were able to witness. And I don't know if you would want to expand upon that as we start to wrap it up, but I mean, that in itself is incredible. So we've heard about this movement, but then y'all actually witnessed people proclaiming that Jesus is their Savior through baptism. So would you be willing to share that as we begin to move towards wrapping up this, at least this next version of the story?
Yeah, of course, I would be privileged to. So we are there, and again, we have connection with, this was in Bogaya with Anirudh, and it was a typical Tuesday night. And,
It's just a regular Tuesday.
And he said, he's getting pictures on his phone all day.
Constant.
And videos of people getting baptized, churches that are baptizing. And so
oh my goodness.
He knew that this was taking place, and he's like, hey, do you guys want to go across town? There's a church that's doing baptism tonight. So we get there, we go up on the roof. I'm not exactly sure why, but there was a large bathtub or baptistry, something that could be filled with water on the roof.
It was just their water tank that feeds the water to the rest of the house.
Okay, so we go up there again. It's a normal Tuesday night, and there's a crop of new believers that they don't take baptism lightly. They weren't getting baptized on the spot, but they had all come to faith probably in the last several weeks, and it kind of worked through the essentials of the Christian faith, and the leaders there, the pastors, felt that they were ready. And so there were probably about 35 people that were there. And the pastor got in the water. We began to baptize. They let Heather baptize, Chad baptized. But one of the coolest things about this scene is there on the roof in Bodh Gaya, just to our right, probably 100 yards away, maybe 150 yards away, is a 90-foot statue of Buddha. Right, because again, Bodh Gaya is the birthplace of Buddhism. It's where Buddha found enlightenment, and so there's these giant statues. So there we are on the roof, and you can see this giant statue of Buddha, and there in front of us, we just see a line of brand new believers that are just getting baptized one after the other after the other. We got to take a picture with them. We got to celebrate, and it's incredible to think, right? 35, and this was just a normal Tuesday night. This is what God is doing. He's moving that rapidly. People are sharing their faith with their relationship network. We asked Anirudh when we were talking to him, do you ever just go up and share with someone randomly off the street? He's like, oh no, we wouldn't do that. They go into an area, they make a relationship, they get a deep connection, they lead someone to the Lord, and then they ask that person to share the news with their relationship network. And so while we were there, those 35, those are just people that their relatives, their friends, their neighbors, their relationship networks. It was spreading through the village, and in the course of just the last several weeks, 35 of them were ready for baptism.
Sounds like y'all got a lot of answers in how it's spreading so quickly. Relationship.
We got a lot of vision.
That's
Answers,
so cool.
I think, take time.
True.
You kind of wrestle through it. I want to end with something I heard Andy say this weekend. We had a guest speaker from one of our partners who works in the Middle East, sharing with our church this weekend, and one of the things he finished with was the story of the woman who was brought before Jesus, who had been caught in adultery, and the teachers of the law, the Pharisees that drug her there, had a very specific idea of what should be done, and they asked Jesus, "This lady was caught in this way. What do you think we should do?" And then the story ends, of course, if you know it, that Jesus basically exposes the guys with whatever he writes on the ground, and they all leave. And then Jesus says to the woman, "Where are your accusers? There's none remaining." And then he tells her, "Go and sin no more." That's kind of how the story ends. And my friend was talking about, there was an atheist that he was running through this story with, reading it and talking about it. And the guy said, "Man, if Christians acted more like Jesus, all the world would be Christian." And that's a Gandhi quote as well. Like Gandhi said the same thing. If you don't know Gandhi, Gandhi was one of the primary leaders in Indian history. And it just reminds me there are places where you go on these mission trips and you run into people who live and are acting like Jesus. And you see their love for their community, their love for each other, their love for us. And we just pray that we get to be the kind of people that are showing Jesus to the world around us. And so Andy's statement was such a punch to the gut on Sunday when you're thinking about sometimes our petty differences and our rivalries and our lack of compassion and even our fear and frustration with each other at times, but even more so people we might think of as our enemies or at least our antagonists. And God made them. He loves them. And so, man, he is at work. He's at work in our world. He's at work here at First Baptist Boerne in our community. He's at work in the darkest places of the world that we might think of, like in North India. And in Middle East, other places, we have a team that left today, right, to go to the Middle East. And so we're just so privileged to get to be a part of what God is doing in this world. And so much more to learn, so much more to understand. But we're so thankful to be a part of a church that is asking, I think, the right questions and pursuing the right places.
Absolutely.
And, so, Jason, to some degree, you're fostering a community that's allowing this to happen. You're shepherding a place where God is inspiring his people to draw near to him and draw near to his work. And it really is an incredible thing to be a part of. And so thank you.
I would tell you it's the pleasure of my life, and I would give 100% credit to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I think that's what the gospel does. It produces life. It stirs each of us.
I love it. Well, we will wrap it up today, and when we go off air, listeners, I'm going to see if we can get Pastor Jason and Pastor Chad back in here one more time because there's a little bit more I know to tell. And I hope that as you have listened to this, I truly hope that the Lord has stirred your heart. And maybe, perhaps you will go to the FBC website and you'll check out some of the upcoming mission trips and even possibly sign up for the upcoming Perspectives class, because Psalm 67 reminds us that God wants us to draw to him. It says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us and make his face shine on us so that your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among all nations." And friends, we all have a part to play. We all have a part to play in making his name known on earth. And so as you've been with us today, we want to say thank you, and we hope you feel encouraged, and we hope you'll come back and listen to the next podcast to hear just a little bit more. And maybe you'll even go back if you haven't yet heard the previous podcast about Pastor Jason and Pastor Chad and the team's time in India. Thank you so much, and we hope to be with you again soon.
We are so thankful that you joined our podcast today. We would love to hear any feedback you may have for us. Remember, Psalm 67 says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth and your salvation among all nations." Don't forget why the Lord blesses us. It's so that we can be a blessing to those around us. Until next time, God bless.